Oh gosh, I mean, I grew up in Michigan, in the Detroit suburbs. I was always definitely a tomboy, a nerd, loved reading and like, all the stuff you would associate with a stereotypical like little nerd.
What kind of
Um,
stuff did you read?
as a kid,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, all kinds of stuff. I mean, everything. Like I could probably make a whole list of children's books classics, things like yeah, like I don't know, Boxcar Children, The Mixed Up Bowels of Mrs. Basil E. Frankenthaler. I think I can't pronounce that. The Westing Game was a big one that I really liked. Ballet Shoes. As I got
Was it
older, I read a
was
lot of
this
sci.
like stuff? Was this stuff for? Sorry to interrupt, but was this stuff like for school, or you always loved reading like independent
No,
from what you had to read?
I always loved reading independent of what I had to read. Yeah. Um, Yeah, no way. I always have been an above and beyond reader. And I have enjoyed participating in Farcaster's Books channel too.
Nice. Are you doing the thing with Phil, the weekly course or the 2 month subscription sort of thing?
I don't think I have the bandwidth right now to commit to a reading club as robust as Phil's. Like I have to shout him out for all the cool community things he organizes and what great taste in books he has. I went to FarCon and he organized a books giveaway there where anyone could take a book, and he had an impeccable selection. Every book available was a 5 out of 5, like amazing choice. He crushes it and did a great job and does a great job. So I've no doubt that anyone in that book club is having a great time.
Yeah, no, it's a cool idea. We were talking about it a little bit before. Where were we? We were coming back from base camp actually. I was lucky to get a ride back to LA with Phil, and we were talking about this sort of book thing before he actually did it, and so I was excited to see it come out. And it seems like there's a lot of enthusiasm about it so far. So
Definitely.
you're talking a little bit about your story. Loved reading as a kid. Anything else sort of like as note of note growing up, or
No, no,
sort of like standard?
pretty standard, I'd say. I, I went to school and I have a worthless degree. I have a graphic design degree. Um,
Doesn't sound so worthless.
I don't know. I could go dig it up, but there's a whole thread on Farcaster the other day talking about the value of different degrees. And I would say most people would say mine's a near zero. But from that degree, I wound up working in entertainment. And my first job out of college was producing convention booths for video games. I worked for Rockstar and 2K, among others, and would go to like Comic Cons all over the country to help produce the events.
Hmm.
And
How'd you land in that? It's like pretty niche, right?
I landed that because I got a graphic design internship with a local to Chicago. I was in Chicago at the time, local to Chicago entertainment company that did, I mean, and this will show my age. They published an alt weekly and did talent buying for different venues in Chicago and things like that. And one of the owners of that company was contracted regularly as a DJ for the Comic Con booths.
Hmm.
So through that, I got the job to work with the company that did that full time. I had started in college just doing staffing. And I felt like the coolest college kid. Like, who else, got to go fly out on the weekend to go all expenses paid plus out, like plus money on top to go to these events. So,
That's great. Yeah, no, it's definitely when you're in college, if you can travel and
oh,
get your
yeah.
costs
Yeah.
covered and get some extra money on top, that's pretty much living the dream.
Yeah, and doing like cool stuff too, like with video games and these cool Comic Cons. Like really awesome job for a young person. But I would say somewhere down the line, maybe a year or so in, you kind of like, at least for me, I kind of was like, wait a second, like I can't let this be my whole life, and that's what started to push me towards tech. I got a customer service job at a tech company, and that was a whole thing. It still didn't really like satisfy my intellectual itch. So then I wound up going to one of the first ever programming boot camps.
Hmm.
The company that does it is no longer around. It was called Dev Boot Camp, and they were acquired by Kaplan, who shut them down.
Right.
But yeah, so I did programming boot camp, and that was a life-changing experience for me for sure. I had my like first ever real brush with virality at out of programming boot camp, and made a Chrome extension that would turn any web page into like it would turn any all the pictures on a web page into Ryan Gosling pictures. And I got into media and like all this, and that was like really big for my like career. And then out of the our final project for the programming boot camp, me and my friends did a government data challenge. You go to challenge.gov, you can see all the open challenges to this day. And we won the challenge. And so we got to go, like, at the time, Todd Park was the CTO of the country. We got to go meet Todd Park, and had all those really cool experiences out of that. And we made a basically like a mapping tool that merged sort of like Foursquare and Yelp data with labor violation data, with the idea being that people could use labor infractions as a factor in consumer choice.
Hmm.
So, yeah, and so all this cool stuff I did at a programming boot camp, and the skills itself from that like really changed my whole career, and like what and options. And then I proceeded to acquire all these awesome technical skills and immediately dump them. Because like, yeah, I'd done all those cool projects, and that caught the eye of someone working at one of the biggest media agencies in the world, I'd say, in one of the Omnicom media buying companies. And at that time, they were assembling essentially a team of outside experts, people who had different experiences, um, independent of traditional media training, to come in and do media buying. And so I did that wound up being one of my most longest held jobs. I went to this media agency and joined this like innovation team, and I did like trend forecasting, and then also sort of like scouting. I would go
What was
out.
it about? What was it about what they saw from what you had done? Was it like these viral, like the Ryan Gosling thing or something, or it was just like they just saw what you were building and it seemed like a good fit for what they were looking for?
It was like, well, and also to be fair, I had done previous trend forecasting work
Okay.
freelance. So there was a part of that too. Right, yeah, and just like, oh, like the coder girl, like they're not, it was almost like Avengers Assemble they were trying to do.
Yeah.
And like that was like sort of my role. Like, oh, she has technical literacy, and she knows what's cool, like get her in.
So you're part of the Avengers for a few years.
Yeah, and like, yeah, and and there's like sort of like this sort kind of bullshitty, but I mean, I shouldn't say bullshit, the sort of trend forecasting component to that. And then also, yeah, basically startup matchmaking, where we would go almost like VC scouting and go out into the marketplace and find cool companies, and then help them develop ad offerings or media offerings that we could and then in turn sell back into the agency's clients as exclusives opportunities. So, yeah, I did that for a while. And then yeah, after that, I went sort of brand side, if you want to call it that, a different tech companies, working in marketing, content, etc. since then.
And I saw you had some like award-winning work for like Porsche and some other companies like that. Is that a part of what you're doing now or what you did in the past?
That was what I did in the past. Yeah, those programs were all from my time at the ad agency.
Got it. So what is your actual like sort of day to day these days? Like, not to, I think especially in Farcaster, it's sort of like a better question to try to understand how people are spending their time overall, because even if people do have like a day job, it tends to
Mhm.
be not like the entirety of their existence. So what are you up to these days?
Well, especially, well, let me like take a second to compose myself. So, all through my life, health and fitness has been a huge part of me, especially, I'd say the past 5, 10 years. Like, I've just gotten so interested in all of it, how I can be my best self, the tools and technology that help all of us,
Hmm.
push it further. That's just been such a huge part of, yeah, my life. And I've been a long time athlete too, a runner and a weightlifter. And I've worked with the same weightlifting coach for close to 10 years.
Wow.
And so I knew, yeah, and I knew like that, for my next role, I wanted to work in health tech and be a part of helping other people, understand how good they can feel and helping other people understand themselves and contribute to this like sort of what I kind of view as like growing movement of self-empowerment that is happening as people are getting more information about themselves, their bodies than ever before. So that's what ultimately led me to take the role. I mean, we jokingly call it on Farcaster the PP poo poo company. I'm working at a company that is working on a piece of hardware that will turn any toilet into a smart toilet and help give you insights on your gut health and hydration. And
So
yeah,
how does that work exactly? It's like a stool collection sort of thing?
no, we use optical. And let me see. This is not the, okay. So apologies to the audio only listeners. I have a prototype on video and you can't even
That's
see it.
the video premium. So if you're listening on,
Yeah, yeah. And my screen blur. Hold
free, you
on.
got to go to the YouTube.
There we go. So this is a prototype of the beta device. It is optical. We really believe that we have seen so often how people do buy microbiome tests and stool tests, and it will take them weeks to months to collect the stool sample. No one wants to touch their waste. No one wants to do it. And that's like a big insight that drove the way that this was made. Um, it is a downward facing camera that analyzes your poop and pee instead, which
Huh.
results in a near passive user experience for you. You just slap this on your toilet, make sure it's charged, and go about your day.
Do you know how much it's going to cost
TBD.
roughly?
We have some pre-sale pricing because this is a beta device. It's nowhere
Right.
near the final, and um and we know that our earliest customers are taking a risk with us.
Yeah.
So right now you can pre-order a device for $299. But
Oh, wow. It's pretty
yeah.
reasonable. I was expecting, like, when I said roughly, I was like, sort of, if you weren't going to give a more concrete answer like you did, I was going to say like closer to 100 or 1,000 or something. Like, I figured it wouldn't be unreasonable for this thing to be over $1,000. So a couple hundred or a few hundred is, if you care about your health, it's one of those things where like there's all of these services and products in the health industry that they can get quite pricey. Um, but I feel like it's almost a black and white thing as to like how much you care about your health. The default is like not that much. And then there's a certain segment of people that it's like, we care a ton. And if you care a ton, these things you're talking about, potentially like years of life or how you feel every day. It's like one of these categories that it's almost hard for something to be too highly priced to be worthwhile if you have sort of sufficient care about optimizing your health. So for people who are in that category, like this thing seems like a no-brainer. That's obviously going to be sort of your initial target market. And then over time, I'm sure like economies of scale and stuff, if you guys are able to sell a bunch of these things to people who really care about their health, the idea would be that over time you could probably drop prices and make it a more efficient product or whatever.
Yeah, I think pricing will be an ongoing discussion for us in the future. Right now, it is what it is in part because we know that, yeah, our first customers are taking a chance by pre-ordering with us, and we want to respect the cost it does take to produce something like this while still lowering the barrier to entry. But I think to your point, we do have some pricing flexibility, and I cannot guarantee that the price will stay the same forever. So
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it could definitely, I could see it going up. Like you try to attract some initial customers, then maybe you have to up the price a bit, but then maybe over time, if with success, it can come down to either, the 299 price point that you mentioned, or even less at some point.
TBD. In the end, I think this whole pricing discussion is a little bit of a nerd's night, but in the end, we want every toilet to have a throne, and we hope for a day when your toilet could save your life.
Yeah.
Through this type of continuous monitoring, detecting something, blood and stool, etc., that you might have not noticed had you not had it. So
Yeah, it's funny. I go into these. I figured I'd go into these sort of this new type of podcast series with kind of an open mind to talk about whatever kind of crap comes up, and then we're literally talking about crap. So sort of makes sense. It feels like a appropriate place to
yeah,
start. But
you
yeah,
asked
go
me
ahead.
what I do at my job, and not a day goes by where I do not talk about poop. So
It's good. It's funny. It's a good, it's a good like icebreaker slash, conversation starter with anyone. It's not, your typical answer. So, and I think there's, uh, you know, it sounds like a reasonable story. I'm not going to like dig into the tech of it right now or anything, but it makes sense. No one likes touching their own waste, like you said. So switching gears just a little bit, curious like how you got into Farcast or Warpcast in the first place, like or actually even more broadly, depending on like sort of how it all happened, how you got into crypto. I don't know if the two were hand in hand or if you were already into crypto when you got on Farcast or what.
no, I'd been into crypto for a while. I mean, I came to the scene, if you will, through Bitcoin maximalism, actually, and have been a long time holder of the corn. Uh, almost against my own interest in some way, because I did sort of write off Ethereum, etc., for a long time. And then, of course, like 2019 to 2021, the bull market, I think, drew me in, and just there were certain things I was really compelled by, universal
When
user groups with ENS, etc.
when did
So
you start getting interested in Bitcoin in the first place? Like, I'm trying to get a sense, like how many years were you just like Bitcoin only?
a while. I mean, hold on, let me look.
So the
Oh,
hype cycle was like, 20, the previous hype cycle was like 2017, right? Was it like around then or was it before that?
I would say around then. I'm checking for you.
Right.
Okay. Or maybe I won't. My phone's not loading. We
No, it's
can.
fine. It's not really important. I was trying to make sure you weren't like, at the meetings in 2010, like, in like the
No.
early, like whatever. Yeah. So,
Bitcoin,
yeah. So 20,
Bitcoin. Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
no.
Yeah. So, 2017, sort of like, I feel like, there's generations for these things. There's always like the, in between cases where someone happened to get involved in like
Still feels
2015 or
too
2016,
early
but
though. 2017 still feels too early. Like it was before crypto craze, but
Okay,
Hmm.
so it was like after,
Uh,
because there was a craze in 2017, right? Like I think the peak price of Bitcoin was probably like December 2017, if I remember correctly. So a lot of people got in, you know, around that time and the several months prior or something as the price was going up. But it sounds like you came in post that crash.
Pre the
Oh, hey,
bull of the one we all know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Um, so then what changed your mind to start to become interested in Ethereum versus like being a self-described maximalist?
because everyone was doing all these interesting things. Like, yeah, I did spoke earlier about universal usernames being a big draw for me. Like there was interesting art, people thinking about things in really cool ways. I loved the idea of interoperability, and I had built like little extensions for my video chat where like there was like color palette NFTs, and if you owned them, you could like skin your video with the colors. Like I love that interoperability, and it just seems like a really like fresh creative ecosystem where like Bitcoin wasn't giving it to me. Um yeah, I just felt like people were thinking and doing cool things. And I wound up working at Rainbow Wallet for a year, which is how I found Farcaster.
I was going to say with the interoperability bit, I thought you were going to say like you found out a way to turn everything into to Ryan Gosling again with the Chrome extension, but that's funny. So anyway, you said you worked at Rainbow for like a year or two?
For a year, and that was how I found Farcaster. Pugston had put it in the Slack, and everyone in Rainbow Slack was talking about it. You got to join, you got to join, and so I did.
Nice. And what were you doing over at Rainbow?
Similar job to what I do here today, ops and marketing, BD. With
Got it. Um, and obviously, like you've been well, so we talked about like finding Warpcast, but now you've sort of stuck around for a long time. The way that I first like, I'm sure I'd seen you around on the feed a bit, but the way that I sort of your account like caught my attention was I was sort of tracking these Warpcast rewards because
Mhm.
I was getting a lot of them, and I was trying to see like are other people getting these, and someone created a Dune dashboard, and it was showing like who I don't know if you've seen this, but it was like showing like who has won the most Warpcast rewards or whatever. And have you seen this? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, I
You do?
do. Mhm.
Yeah. So you're at like the top of the list, right? Or like near the top at least. And so what do you think it is about like the way that you are sort of operating on Warpcast that has sort of like struck a chord with people, or that it's sort of like a nice fit for you as like a social app?
Well, I think it's a couple things. And number one is like to be perfectly transparent. Look, like I moved to a new city for work. I don't have a lot of friends here. And so I am able to post a lot. I think there's a consistency and frequency piece here that no one should ever dismiss. I show up every day and I talk my talk. I don't know. It's a part of it. And then I don't know. I don't really think overthink too much about what I post. I just I'm an infovore. I love reading and learning online, and I just try to surface cool stuff that I find online. I feel like I never talk about crypto too, so maybe it's unique in that way. Yeah.
And on the like consumption side of it, like being on Warpcast, seeing what other people are talking about. You mentioned like being an infovore. Are you do you find it compelling more so than other social apps that you've used in the past? I don't know if what else you've used if you're on Twitter or whatever else, but do you find it more interesting, or do you think it's still a bit early and you're just sort of using the microphone but not so much reading the feed?
I have found good stuff on Farcaster, of course. I think we're in a period of change, you know. I would say Discovery was better when the network was smaller. I think we're reckoning with this spam. There's a reckoning with all the spam issue that's sort of distorted the signal to noise for me. Um, but I'm optimistic. I think the channel changes could be really good. I think the Merkel team's really committed to, you know, getting the supply of interesting content right. I don't know. I've all of this to say in the recent times, Discovery hasn't been the best for me on Farcaster, but it's all good. Like I haven't quit yet, right? So
Cool. Well, yeah, no, I mean, I'm in the same boat. Like, you can't, the whole point of like being early on a platform or the thing that you know you're signing up for is like this thing may or may not persist or, let alone grow a lot. But, I've experimented with a bunch of early social platforms, within crypto, even with like BitClout was sort of like an early one. And there's been some others that I wouldn't even call as much like social, but if you would consider like friend tech in the category, obviously, whatever else there's been. But I'm sort of rooting for, some decentralized social network. And I think in parallel, Farcaster and Lens seem to have persisted for 2 to 3 years so far. And I can't really speak to Lens because I sort of signed up for both around the same time and just never really ended up using Lens very much and have obviously been using Farcaster, as much or more than Twitter probably over the last 2+ years, which is quite a bit. And so, it's just one of those things. It's like, yeah, sure, maybe it'll all come falling down at some point and it'll never really go anywhere. It'll like stall out. But for now, it's interesting and it's fun. And especially in a time where, Twitter, which was like previously my favorite social app, feels just really worse than ever. Like nothing against, Elon or anything. Like I think it's admirable what he's doing in the name of free speech and everything. But he's trying to make a profitable business as well. And people like short-term videos. They might not like that they like short videos, but like they do, and that's what they click. Even myself, like the stuff that I click is not the stuff that I really would choose to click if I was not if I could fully like completely control my reptile brain and just choose what I actually am doing. And so Twitter shows me a lot of like the reptile brain stuff. And Farcaster is actually just like more interesting in terms of the content that I see there. And it just feels better for me for what I put out as well. Like you said, it's just, you kind of just like write about whatever you want to write about, cast about whatever you want to cast about. Twitter, I feel like it's this more like, it's almost become like a LinkedIn. It's like sort of a TikTok on one side, and then it's like a LinkedIn on the other side. TikTok, in terms of like my feed, looks like what I imagine TikTok looks like. Not that I've spent a ton of time there. And on the sort of production side, it feels like LinkedIn almost. And I'm like, oh, this has to be like a little bit more like proper or a little bit more like whatever. And on Farcaster, I just write whatever I want. I feel like it feels more authentic. I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
It does. I would say though, like probably the healthiest app I have on my phone is Feedly and my RSS reader. And that's
Right.
where I cover a lot of stuff too. And I would say that would be in the end, I think uh if you're really looking for good discovery, moving away from algorithms altogether is like like I always find the best stuff in my RSS reader, and it's like nice to be able to pick and choose what I learn about and read about when I want. Um, it's to your point, it's decidedly against the business models of these websites. So,
Yeah. I think,
but if anyone's interested in, I don't know, dopamine detox or whatever, RSS is the way.
yeah, no, I really respect and admire that. Actually, it's I'm sort of aware that that's like the healthy alternative, and I just haven't. I think I dabbled with it at some point, like a few years ago, but I haven't like substantially committed to building myself a quality RSS feed. And I don't know. I'm sort of lazy. It's almost like an RSS feed feels like having an exceptionally like healthy diet or something. And my version of like information diet control is more of like fast for a few days here and there.
Mm.
Um, and so it's sort of like a lazy strategy, but it sort of works for me. And I'd say in general, I don't know, actually, these days might not be as true as it once was, but I've generally tried to be just like a low consumption person. And if you just lower the overall consumption of the information that you're taking in, you don't have, it's naturally you're going to have a little bit more control over what that is. It's going to be a little bit more conscious, um, less just like sort of default, let everything in. But I don't know. It's a tough problem and getting tougher. Um, but maybe there are tools that will make it easier as well to sort of like fight that. I'm not sure. But
One day
anyway,
we'll,
last question. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
one day we'll have our AI agents, we'll set our
Yeah.
processes that there and it'll filter everything and check the information and yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
So
what I was just thinking. As I was saying, it's like only getting harder. I was like, well, it could get easier too. Always sort of like have the optimist counter, which is
yeah.
nice. And I never know if it's exactly true or not, but at least it's hopeful. Um, so anyway, I know we're sort of coming up on the scheduled time, and actually a few minutes over. So appreciate you going over a little bit, but this has been a ton of fun, and appreciate you being willing to participate in this experiment with me. Hopeful that it'll sustain and persist for longer than a few experimental episodes. But my initial sort of findings are, it's fun and enjoyable, and hopefully some other people can tune in and enjoy it. And hopefully it was good and enjoyable for you. And at the end of the day, it sounds like a pretty worthwhile thing to do. So appreciate the time and great to
Of
get to know
course.
you a little bit. And I'll be seeing you on the feed.
Yeah, see you on the feed. Bye bye.
All right. Have a good one. Bye bye.
You.